Are you ready for it? Are you ready for Ruth chapter 3? In the first chapter, we're introduced to the heartache, the tragedy that both Naomi and Ruth experience in the losses of their husbands and their homes. In chapter 2, we find the romance budding between Ruth and Boaz, who is a kinsman redeemer. He's a close relative of Naomi and has the ability to restore Naomi's home and inheritance and secure for Ruth her own home. In chapter 3, wow, the romance starts to get steamy. In chapter 3, Naomi comes up with a plan to secure and preserve hers and Ruth's livelihood. At the end of chapter 2, we find that Ruth had worked in the fields of Boaz all throughout the barley harvest. She worked with his servant girls. She was not harmed. Rather, she clung to Boaz as the wheat harvests were finished. And we're told that she lived with her mother-in-law, Naomi. During this time, Ruth and Boaz have lots of opportunity to really get to know one another. At the start of chapter 3, with verse 1, we begin. One day, Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to Ruth, "My daughter, should I not try to find a home for you where you will be well provided for?" Naomi uses the nickname that Boaz gave to Ruth, the nickname of apple of my eye. So she says to Ruth, "The apple of my eye, should I not try to find a home?" In the Hebrew, the word to find is actually desire. Should I not desire a home? A place where you can preserve our inheritance. In verse 2, she goes on and she says, is not Boaz, with whose servant girls you have been during the barley and the wheat harvests, is he not a kinsman of ours? See, the light bulb is going off in Naomi's head. She's got a plan for Ruth to use all her feminine wiles to gain them a home. Naomi says to Ruth, Tonight, Boaz will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. This is hard work, but it's also an opportunity for the community to come together and to work together as they thresh the grain. Using winnowing forks, they would toss the grain up into the air. The chaff, the bad part of the stalks, being lighter than the seeds, would then be blown about by the wind. The seeds would fall back down onto the threshing floor. So the more you toss the seeds and the chaff up in the air, the more the chaff is separated and pushed away and the seeds fall down. And the community does this all night long. And it becomes a celebration moment. Notice what Naomi says in verse 3. She says to Ruth, "Wash and perfume yourself. Get pretty, real pretty, like eye-poppin' pretty." She says, "And put on your best clothes." Oh, you're gonna turn heads as you prepare for romance. And then she says, "Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let Boaz know that you are there until he has finished eating and drinking." In other words, she says, wait secretly and watch for the time when the work is done, the feasting is over, and Boaz has finished drinking. In other words, wait until he's drunk. And when he lies down because he's drunk and about to pass out, note the place where he is lying down. And then she says, "Then go and uncover his feet and lie down. And then he will tell you what to do." That's how our English Bibles read. The Hebrew makes you blush. For the Hebrew reads, "Go and uncover his genitals." The phrase "uncover his feet" to the ancient Israels was a euphemism. A euphemism that meant to uncover a person's private parts, his genitals. So the Hebrew says, go and expose Boaz's genitals while he's passed out drunk, and then lie down. In the Hebrew, the word for lie down literally means have sex. So Naomi tells Ruth, get yourself beautified, stunningly so. Wait in secret. Wait for your kinsman redeemer to get drunk, pass out, then go and uncover his genitals and have sex with him. And then he will tell you what to do. That's Naomi's plan. Ruth, in verse 5, responds, I will do whatever you say. In the ancient society, it was the mother of the household, in this case, Naomi. Even though she's Ruth's mother-in-law, she's still the matriarch figure in their relationship. And it is the mother who was responsible for guiding her daughters, or in this case her daughter-in-law, in the ways of sex. Ruth accepts this cultural, normal instruction from her mother-in-law. So she says, I will do whatever you say. Verse 6 says, and so she went down to the threshing floor. Remember, this is a community celebration. It's also a time of hard work. So you've got a lot of sweaty people moving about, dancing about, threshing the grain, tossing it up, singing, eating, and drinking. She goes down to the threshing floor, and she did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. Here's some food for thought. Can redemption come from deceit? We read in verse 7, when Boaz had finished eating and drinking, and was in good spirits, oh yeah, he's drunk, he went to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. So he's going down and he's hoping maybe he'll get lucky. Ruth approached quietly. The Hebrew word means secretly. And she uncovered his feet. She uncovered his genitals. And she laid down. She had sex with Boaz. In verse 8, now we read, in the middle of the night, something startled the man. Boaz turned and discovered a woman lying at his feet. A woman curled up with his genitals exposed. There are several things that could happen now. Sex, if not resulting in pregnancy, would still ensure either marriage for Ruth or a payoff by Boaz if he didn't want this illicit affair to become public knowledge. Either way, Ruth wins. Naomi wins. If Ruth becomes pregnant, then Boaz, by the law of Moses, must make restitution and take both Naomi and Ruth into his home and adopt the child as his own, which it would be. If Ruth does not conceive, Boaz may still decide to marry her, as is right according to the law of Moses, that if a man lies with a young girl, he is to take that young girl as his wife. If Boaz decides to pay off Ruth, then Ruth and Naomi receive quite a large sum of money and wealth that they can then live on and survive by. So again, it all benefits both Ruth and Naomi, that their plan has worked out perfectly to this point. So Boaz is startled. He wakes up from his drunken stupor. He turns and he discovers he's naked and Ruth is laying next to him. He asks, "Who are you?" Ruth says, "I am your servant Ruth." That's how our English Bibles read. The Hebrew word for servant here is concubine. I am your concubine. I am your sex partner. She then says, "Spread the corner of your garment over me." The Hebrew literally reads, "Take me under your wing." This again is a phrase that refers to marriage. So Ruth says, "I am your concubine. I am your sex slave. You may do whatever you want with me. Just take me under your wing and marry me. Because you are a kinsman redeemer. You have the ability, according to the law of Moses, to preserve the land and inheritance of Naomi's first husband, of caring for Naomi and caring for me, Ruth, all by taking us into your home and taking me as a wife. Now imagine what must be going through Boaz's mind. He just spent the evening working hard, working up a great sweat. He then feasts, he fills his belly, and he drinks himself into good spirits. Then, in a drunken stupor, he passes out among the grain, only to find out that he got lucky, and he has no memory of it. So what does he do in verse 10? He responds, "The Lord bless you, my daughter." Again, this is Ruth's nickname. The Lord, Yahweh our God, may he bless you, the apple of my eye. He says, "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier." What was the kindness that Ruth showed earlier? We can only speculate. It was probably some nice flirting throughout the time of the barley and the wheat harvests. But now she had sex with him. He doesn't remember, but she had sex with him. And he says, "This kindness is greater." He does not put her down for her deceit. He does not condemn her for tricking him. He calls it a kindness. He says, "You have not run after younger men, whether rich or poor." And in verse 11 he says, "And now my daughter," again, the apple of my eye, "and now the apple of my eye." You can almost imagine Boaz just kind of reaching out and caressing Ruth's face, maybe brushing his hand through her hair, maybe doing a few other things with her body, as he says, "The apple of my eye, do not be afraid. I will do for you all that you ask. He says, all my fellow townsmen know that you are a woman of noble character. The Hebrew here reads, you are a woman of strength and might. And Ruth has worked hard in the field, so hard that Boaz himself promoted her from a poor beggar to a servant slave to being equal to that of the harvesters. He says, everybody in the town knows you're a woman of strength and might. He says in verse 12, although it is true that I am a near of kin, that I'm a kinsman redeemer, he says, there's one hitch to your plan. There is a kinsman redeemer nearer than I, which means there's a relative by blood who is closer to Naomi or Naomi's husband. And by law, this person has first rights to Ruth. And Boaz, being a man of the law, is willing to let this person, this other man, exercise his right, whether Boaz wants this to happen or not. It's the law, it's the right thing to do. So he says here, I love this in verse 13. He says, stay here for the night. And in the morning, if this other person wants to redeem you, well, good, let him redeem. But if he's not willing, as surely as the Lord Yahweh our God lives, I will do it. I will redeem you. I will marry you. And then he says here, lie here until morning. And in verse 13, it says, or verse 14, it says that, and Ruth lay at his feet until morning. Now remember, what does the euphemism feet refer to? A man's genitals. What does the word to lie down mean? It means to have sex. And so what happens here between verses 13 and 14? Boaz and Ruth get their freaky on all night long. Boaz continues to have sex with Ruth. And now he's not drunk. Now he's fully aware of it. And he can enjoy finally getting to be with the apple of his eye. So it says in verse 14, Ruth lay at his feet until morning. She had sex with Boaz until morning. And then she got up. She got up before anyone could recognize her. Just as Boaz said. Boaz then says to some of his other harvesters, some of his other friends that are also starting to stir, coming out of their drunken stupors as well. Other ones who kind of noticed what was going on in the grain pile where Boaz was sleeping. He says, don't let it be known that a woman came to the threshing floor. Boaz says, keep this escapade that I had all night long, this hot X-rated escapade, with Ruth a secret. Then he said to Ruth, bring me the shawl that you are wearing and hold it out. And when she did, he poured 6 measures of barley. And he put it in the shawl. Then he went back to town. Now the question is this a payoff? I don't think so. I think this is a gift of affection. He's giving Ruth something that she can take back to her mother-in-law, Naomi, to show that their plan succeeded and was blessed by the very man they attempted to deceive. Verse 16 tells us, when Ruth came back to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, "How did it go, my daughter?" Again, this is the nickname. How did it go? The apple of my eye. Give me the juicy details. You've been gone all night. Spill the beans. And Ruth told her everything Boaz had done for her. And she added, "And he gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, 'Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" So not only does Boaz show affection to Ruth, his affection is extended to Naomi, his near kin. See, Boaz is a smart man. Boaz would have realized that this was not just a plan that Ruth concocted on her own. This is a very satisfying deception that Naomi came up with. And Boaz approves. So in verse 18, Naomi says, "Wait, my daughter, wait, the apple of my eye, until you find out what happens next. For that man will not rest until the matter is settled today." In chapter 3, the romance heats up to an X-rated level between Ruth and Boaz. Can redemption follow deception? According to the book of Ruth, it can. If the person who is being deceived views what has been done not as a harm or an offense, but as an act of kindness, and is overwhelmingly pleased with the plan that was set in motion. So what happens now? What is this man who will not rest until the matter is settled going to do next? Well, we have to see what happens between Boaz and this other nearer kinsman redeemer, who does have the right to claim Ruth for his own, and thus exercise first rights by taking her away from Boaz as his wife. What will happen? Join us next time for the conclusion of the book of Ruth as we look at chapter 4. God bless.